Okay,
Okay.
so it says here that we are at stage 7, paragraph page 597. Okay, and our last headword was feelings, numeric type of lesson. Yep. Okay, so let's start with revision. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. First question. When you add sugar to a cup of coffee, what happens if you don't stir it? When you add sugar to a cup of coffee, what happens if you don't stir it? When you add
When you add
sugar to a cup
sugar
of coffee
to a cup of coffee
and don't stir it,
and don't stir
the
it,
sugar settles
the sugar
to the
settles
bottom of the
to the
cup.
bottom of the cup.
Right, if two countries can't settle a political problem, where do they go in order to settle it? If two countries can't settle a political problem, where do they go in order to settle it? If two countries
If two
can't
countries
settle
can't
a
settle
political problem,
a political problem,
they go to
they
the
go
United Nations
to the United
in
Nations
order to settle it.
in order to settle it.
Regid, what does a teacher say to pupils when they are making too much noise? What does a teacher say to pupils when they are making too much noise? A teacher says,
A teacher says,
"Come on now,
come on now,
settle down," to
settle down
pupils
to
when
pupils
they are making
when they are
too
making
much noise.
too much noise.
Regid, if someone said that they were planning to go on holiday but that nothing had been settled yet, what do they mean? If someone said that they were planning to go on holiday, but that nothing had been settled yet, what would they mean? If someone said
If someone
that
said
they were planning
that they were
to
planning
go on holiday,
to go on holiday,
but that nothing
but that nothing
had been settled yet,
had been settled
they would
yet,
mean
they would mean
that they had not made
that they had not made
any final decisions yet.
any final decision yet.
Very good. What do we mean by unsettled weather? What do we mean by unsettled weather? By unsettled weather,
By unsettled weather,
we mean
we
weather
mean weather
that's constantly changing.
that's constantly changing.
Regid, would you say that success in life was partly a question of luck? Would you say that success in life was partly a question of luck? Yes or no? I'd
Yes,
say
I'd
that
say
success in life
that success in
was
life
partly a
was partly
question of luck.
a question of luck.
Regid, the soldiers have to be extremely brave when they go into battle. The soldiers have to be extremely brave when they go into battle? Yes.
Yes,
Soldiers have to
sol-
be
soldiers have to be
extremely brave
extremely brave
when they go into battle.
when they go into battle.
Very good. What does it mean to be tidy? What does it mean to be tidy? To be tidy means
To be tidy
to
means
keep things
to keep
in
things
their proper place.
in their proper place.
Are you a tidy person? Are you a tidy person? Yes or no?
Yes,
I'm a tidy person.
I'm a tidy person.
Very good. Is it often difficult for parents to get their children to tidy their rooms? Is it often difficult for parents to get their children to tidy their rooms? Yes, it's
Yes,
often difficult
it's often
for
difficult
parents
for
to
parents
get their children
to get their
to
children
tidy their rooms.
to tidy their rooms.
Greg, have you ever acted on the stage in the theater? Have you ever acted on the stage in the theater? Yes or no? Have you ever
No,
acted? Okay. I've never acted
I've never
on
acted
the stage
on the
in
stage
the theater.
in the theater.
Greg, would you be afraid to act on the stage? Would you be afraid to act on the stage? Yes or no?
Yes,
I'd be afraid
I'd be afraid
to act on the
to
stage.
act on the stage.
Very good. At what stage of your English studies are you at the moment? Beginner, intermediate, or advanced? At what stage of your English studies are you at the moment? Beginner, intermediate, or advanced? I'm at an
I'm at an
intermediate stage
intermediate
of
stage
my English studies
of my English
at the moment.
studies at the moment.
At what stage of a man's life does his hair begin to drop out? At what stage of a man's life does his hair begin to drop out? A man's hair
A man's
can
hair
begin
can
to
begin
drop out
to drop
at
out
any stage
at any
in
stage
his life.
in his
It
life.
depends
It
on the
depends
individual.
on the individual.
Very good. What is a stream? What is a stream? A stream
A stream
is a small river.
is a small river.
But if you follow the river downstream, or if you follow the river upstream, where would it eventually lead you to? If you follow the river upstream, where would it eventually lead you to? If you followed
If you
a
followed
river upstream,
a river upstream,
it did eventually
it did eventually
lead you to the mountain,
lead, lead you
to
to
the
the mountain
mountains or hills.
or hills.
Very good. And if you followed it downstream, where would it eventually lead you to? And if you followed it downstream, where would it eventually lead you to? If you followed it
If you followed it
downstream,
downstream,
it did eventually
it did eventually
lead you to the sea
lead you to the sea
or a lake.
or a lake.
Very good. If you saw a stream of people streaming out of a building in a hurry, what did you think? If you saw a stream of people streaming out of a building in a hurry, what did you think? If I saw
If I
a
saw
stream of people
a stream of people
streaming out of a
streaming
building
out of a building
in a hurry,
in a
I'd
hurry,
think that
I think that
either the building
either the
was
building
on fire
was on
or
fire
that the people
or that the people
had just finished work.
had just finished the work.
Very good. What are two types of relative clauses? What are two types of relative clauses? The two types
The two
of
types
relative clauses
of relative
are
clauses
defining clauses
are defining
and
clauses
non-defining clauses.
and non-defining clauses.
Very good. What's the difference between a defining relative clause and a non-defining relative clause? What's the difference between a defining relative clause and a non-defining relative clause? The difference between
The difference
a
between
defining
a
relative
defining
clause
relative clause
and a non-defining
and a non-defining
relative clause is that
relative clause is
a
that
defining relative
a,
clause
a defining relative clause
identifies which person
identifies which person
or thing
or
we
thing
are talking about,
we are talking about,
whereas a non-defining
whereas a
relative clause
non-defining relative
simply
clause
gives us extra
simply
information
gives us extra
about
information
them.
about them.
Very good. Give me an example of a sentence containing a defining relative clause. Give me an example of a sentence containing a defining relative clause, please. The milk
The
that
milk
she bought
that
this
she
morning
bought this morning
is in the fridge.
is in the fridge.
Very good. Give me an example of a sentence containing a non-defining relative clause. Give me an example of a sentence containing a non-defining relative clause, please. My new glasses,
My new
which
glasses,
I bought yesterday,
which I bought
are
yesterday,
really expensive.
are really expensive.
Very good. How is a non-defining clause separated from a main part of the sentence? How is a non-defining clause separated from the main part of the sentence? A non-defining clause
A non-defining
is
clause
separated
is
from the
separated
main part of the
from the main
sentence
part of the
by
sentence
commas.
by commas.
Very good. When can we use the relative pronoun that instead of who or which? When can we use the relative pronoun that instead of who or which? We can use
We
the
can use
relative pronoun
the
that
relative pronouns that
instead of who,
instead
instead of who
instead of who
or which
or which
in defining clauses.
in defining
We
clauses.
cannot use that.
We can use
uh,
not that.
we cannot use
We
that
cannot use that
in non-defining clauses.
in non-defining clauses.
Give me an example. Give me an example, please. The biscuits
The
that
biscuits
I ate were
that I
very
ate
tasty.
were very tasty.
Very good. Correct the mistake in this sentence, please. London, that is the capital of England, is a big city. Correct the mistake in this sentence, please. London, that is the capital of England, is a big city. London,
London,
which is the
which
capital
is the
of
capital
England,
of
is
England
a big city.
is a big city.
So we use which for defining. Okay, next.
Okay,
What
define.
does the idiom for good mean? What does the idiom for good mean? The idiom
The idiom
for good means
for good means
forever.
forever.
Give me an example. Give me an example, please. I'm sure
I'm sure
they'll stay together
they'll stay together
for good
for good
because
because
they're
to,
such
they are
a
such
perfect couple.
a perfect couple.
Very good. Okay, next. What am I doing? What am I doing? You're waving your hand.
You are, you are
Waving
waving
your
your
hand.
hand.
Very good. What happened to the branch of a tree when it waves too much in the wind? What happens to a branch of a tree when it waves too much in the wind? When the branch
When the
of a
branch
tree
of a tree
waves too much
waves
in
too
the wind,
much
it
in the wind,
breaks
it
and
breaks
falls to the ground.
and falls to the ground.
Very good. On what occasions do we wave our hands? On what occasions do we wave our hands? We wave our
We
hands
wave our
when we
hands
say goodbye
when we say
to
goodbye
someone,
to
or
someone or
when we want
when we want
somebody to
somebody
notice us
to notice
from a
us
distance.
from a distance.
Where is it pleasant to travel by boat when the waves of the sea are very high? Is it pleasant to travel by boat when the waves of the sea are very high? No,
No,
it isn't pleasant
it isn't
to
pleasant
travel by boat
to travel by boat
when the waves of the sea
when, when the waves of the sea
are very high.
are very high
Why not? Why not? Because it
because
can be dangerous.
it can be
And
dangerous
also because
and also
we
because
can get seasick.
we can get seasick.
Very good. Do you prefer wavy hair rather than straight hair? Do you prefer wavy hair rather than straight hair? Yes or no?
Yes,
I prefer
I prefer
wavy hair
wavy hair
rather than straight hair.
rather than straight hair.
Very
Sorry, straight hair.
straight. No, I don't prefer
No, I don't prefer
wavy hair
wavy hair
rather than straight hair.
rather than
Straight.
straight hair.
Very good. Next, what do you recommend that people do in order to succeed in life? What do you recommend that people do in order to succeed in life? I recommend
I
that
recommend
people
that
work hard
people work hard
in order to
in order
succeed in
to
life.
succeed in life.
Like, which film would you recommend seeing at the cinema at the moment? Which
At
film
the
would you
moment,
recommend seeing at the cinema at the moment? I recommend
I recommend
seeing,
seeing, recommend seeing,
you know, at the
minions
cinema
at the cinema
at the moment.
at the moment.
Very good. Okay, if someone said that they wanted a quiet holiday, which part of your country would you recommend to them? If someone said they wanted a
Someone said
quiet
they
holiday,
want to
which
find
part of your
holiday.
country would you recommend to them? If someone said
If someone said
they wanted
they
a
wanted
quiet holiday,
a quiet holiday,
I'd recommend
I'd recommend
mhm,
Fukuoka
to them.
to them.
Very good. How many grams make a pound? How many grams
Uh,
make a pound? About
About
454 grams
454
make a
grams
pound.
make a pound.
Very good. Okay, next. What, generally speaking, is the difference between an injury and a wound? What, generally speaking, is the difference between an injury and a wound? Generally speaking,
Generally speaking,
the difference between
the difference
an
between
injury and a
an
wound
injury and wound
is that
is that
wound, uh,
wound
we use injury
we use injury
for something we receive
for something we receive
by accident,
by
and
accident
wound
and
for
wound
something we receive
for something we receive
from fighting.
from fighting.
Very good. Have you ever seen anyone badly injured as the result of an accident? Have you ever seen anyone badly injured as a result of an accident? Yes or no?
Sword?
Have you
No,
ever seen? No. I've never
no.
seen
I've never seen
anyone
anyone
badly injured
badly injury
as a result
as a result
of an accident.
of an accident.
Very good. Do you know anyone who has been wounded in a war? Do you know anyone who has been wounded in a war? Yes or no?
War.
War. No,
No,
I don't know
I
anyone
don't know anyone
who has been
who
wounded
has been wounded
in a war.
in a war.
Very good. Are your feelings easily wounded? Are your feelings easily wounded? Yes or no? Like, are your feelings easily hurt or wounded? Yes or no?
N- no,
Very good. My feelings
my feelings
aren't easily wounded.
aren't easily wounded.
Very good. Okay, and that's the end of our revision. Let's have numeric. Okay, Shinji, repeat. Sincere.
Sincere,
With the letter S. Sincere.
sincere,
Very good.
sincere.
Okay, listen. Sincere is an adjective. It means honest or true person. Sincere. For example, if we say that somebody is not being sincere, we mean that they are not expressing their true feelings. They're not being honest.
Honest.
Okay,
はい。
let's
sincere.
practice. What do we
Sincere.
mean if we say that somebody is not being sincere? What do we mean if we say that somebody is not being sincere? If we say
If we
that
say
somebody
that
is
somebody
not being
is not
sincere,
being
we
sincere,
mean that
we mean that
they are not expressing
they are not
their
expressing
true feelings.
their true
Feelings.
feelings
Very good. Next, repeat voluntary.
voluntarily.
Very good. Okay, listen. The word voluntary is an adjective. For
Voluntarily.
example, a
はい。
voluntary work. It is something done, made, or given without being forced or paid. Okay, let's practice. Have you ever done any voluntary work? Have you ever done
Voluntary.
any voluntary work?
Have
Yes
I ever done?
or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. はい。
Yes,
Yes.
I've done
I've
a
done
voluntary work.
a sorry.
Voluntary
Voluntary,
work.
voluntary work.
Wait, one more. Yes, I've done
Yes, I've done
a voluntary
a
work.
voluntary work.
Very good. Do you think children ought to be made to study? Or do you think studying ought to be voluntary? Do you think
Voluntary.
children ought
はい。
to be made to study? Or do you think studying ought to be voluntary? Yes or no?
Yes,
I think children
I think
ought
children
to be made
ought to be made
to study.
to study
Why? Why? Because
because
they
why?
will not study
They will not study
on their own.
on their own.
Very good. Okay, next repeat. Separate.
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 Very good. Okay, notice that it's the same spelling but different
Same spelling.
pronunciation. Okay, the first one.
Mm-hmm. はい。
Separate.
Separate.
Okay, that's a verb. Separate.
Separate.
Okay, next one
は
is
い。
separate.
Separate.
Sep
Sorry. Sep
separate.
separate.
Very good. So that's an
separate.
adjective. Separate.
separate. Separate. はい。
Separate.
OK。
Separate.
separate. separate.
Very good. Okay, listen.
おー
So there are many words in English that have the same spelling but are
は
pronounced differently. For example, we have read
right.
and read.
は
So this is the present tense read, and this is also the past tense, but we say read. Read, read. We have
read.
used, use, and separate and separate.
separate. separate.
Okay,
separate. はい。
listen.
separate.
Okay, let's practice. What's the difference between separate and separate?
separate.
What's the
separate.
difference between separate and separate? The difference between
The difference between
separate and
separate
separate
and
is
separate
that separate
is that
is
separate
the verb,
is the verb,
whereas separate
whereas separate
is the adjective.
is the adjective.
The
adjective. はい。
adjective. Very good.
adjective.
Okay. Next, let's have formal letters and emails.
formal letters and emails.
Okay.
はい。
So repeat dear,
dear,
faithfully,
ふんふん
faithfully,
faithfully,
sincerely,
sincerely,
regards.
regards.
Very good. Okay, listen. So let's talk about composing formal letters and emails. So listen. In a formal letter or email, we begin with the words dear sir or dear
dear,
madam if we don't
madam.
know the name of the person we are writing to. We generally end a letter, formal letter or email, with yours faithfully, or sometimes less formal like kind regards or best regards.
Oh,
If we do know the name of the person we are writing to, we begin with dear and then the name of the person, and we can end with the words yours sincerely, or again kind regards or best regards. In an informal letter or email, we usually begin with the words dear and then the name, or hi and then the name, and end with best wishes or love. Okay, so let's practice. How do we
okay.
begin a formal letter or email if we don't know the name of the person we're writing to? How do we begin a formal letter or email if we don't know the name of the person we're writing to? We begin a
We
formal
begin
letter
a formal
or
letter
email
or
with the
email
words dear
with
sir,
the words
dear
Dear
sir,
Sir
or dear madam
or Dear Madam
if we don't know
if we don't
the
know
name of the person
the name of the
we are
person
writing to.
we are writing to.
Very good. Okay, so now let's move on to reading.
Okay, reading.
Okay, so our reading is at stage 7, paragraph page 513. Okay, and our last headword was step. Okay, start with the fourth question.
Step.
Okay,
はい、4
fourth
question.
question. Step
Would,
one, two, three. Would it be a big step?
okay, would it be a big step for you to go and